Hi everyone, my name's Dr. Kevin Vento. I'm a clinical psychologist working in Croydon. I'm a consultant and I'm the psychosis pathways lead. And it's all very exciting today actually because I've got this opportunity to host this broadcast that often Al would be presenting. Just for those people who are just who aren't familiar with these broadcasts, in this series we're trying to explore how psychologists and therapists from a wide range of backgrounds and practices are working with the local community groups to build on the strengths and help make those communities a bit more resilient. It's been a really tough year, it's been a tough 6 months. COVID has had an enormous impact on the local communities, it's had an enormous impact on services, and it's really important that we try and think probably more outside of the box and think about how we can work outside of secondary mental health services to try and develop interventions that better meet the needs of the communities. The idea of these sessions is to illustrate some of the good work that can be done with psychological practitioners outside of secondary mental health services. The idea is to promote resilience for those individuals and for communities. I'm particularly passionate about this because it's my community. I'm from South London, I'm BAME, I'm second generation Afro-Caribbean man, and it's actually my community that has been affected by COVID. It's been affected by all the recent challenges and Black Lives Matter and etc. So I am excited about hosting this because for me it's bigger than just the trust. It's something that is going to hopefully highlight new ways of working and help us move forward with the prevention agenda. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about how IAPT needs to change in order to better support the BAME community and BAME people. And to help me with this, we're going to be talking a bit about some innovative work, some really exciting work that's been happening in Lewisham. We're going to be exploring how a community project has kind of worked with IAPT services and to better improve the care for the BAME community. What I'm going to do now is I just want to do some introductions. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Ellen. Ellen, would you be able to introduce yourself? Oh.
Thanks, Kevin. My name's Ellen Heralall. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm one of the clinical team leaders in the IAPT Lewisham service, and I'm the diversity lead for the Lewisham IAPT service.
Okay. And Yvonne, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, thank you Kevin. So my name is Yvonne, I am the Senior Psychological Wellbeing Practitioner and I support Ellen in implementing the diversity strategy and building relationships within the community.
Fantastic. And is Hilna able to join us? Yeah, can Hilna introduce herself as well? No.
Hilna, you're on mute.
Oh, how did that happen?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
My name is Hilna Fontaine.
I don't understand why I'm mute though. I don't think I'm mute. Go on, Hilna. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. So my name is Hilna Fontaine. My company is Mabadiliko. We're a community interest company. Mabadiliko stands for or means change in Swahili. We provide culturally sensitive spaces to have conversations about race and different cultures, and we also deliver immersive support groups.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome, Hilna. What we're going to do is we want to kick off with a first question actually, because I'm particularly interested because I actually, after training, I started off in an IAPT service. So this was over 10 years ago, and one of my motivations for joining IAPT was because I'm really passionate about increasing access. You know, for my community, getting access to mental health services has always been a real challenge. And I know that part of it is maybe the NHS and how it's set up, but it's also partly our community and how we understand mental health. And one of the things that always kind of stuck in my mind was in the title IAPT, which is increasing access to psychological therapies. I remember when I started over 10 years ago, I couldn't see the increasing access bit. That we provided a lot of psychological therapies, we had to get bums on seats, we had to provide evidence-based treatments, and it was all fantastic. But then there wasn't the community engagement side of things, and that's why this is really important. This bit of work that we're talking about today. So my first question's for Ellen, actually. What is the challenging part of, what is the challenges for IAPT in terms of engaging BAME people, and how have you tried to solve that? So that's
thanks,
Ellen.
Kevin. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I guess the first thing to say is that there are many challenges within IAPT, within the NHS, and within the wider society. You know, we're talking about, you know, very sort of embedded structural problems, structural racism, which IAPT are faced, you know, equally along with other services, that challenge. So as you say, you know, increasing access, and we have increased access as an IAPT service. We have increased our access to lots of the community, but we remain we remain not, you know, providing an equitable service, a fair service to our BAME communities. So our BAME communities are you know, face barriers, face lots of obstacles in accessing our service. When they do access our service, they have poorer outcomes, poorer experiences. So we're really, you know, we're really aware that at sort of every level of service design, service delivery within IAPT, we have challenges. So we're not going to have long enough today, are we, to go through all of them. So I guess, you know, you mentioned the sort of community working, and you know, for me it's really about partnership working. So what we're doing in IAPT Lewisham is we're really working, trying to work closely with our community colleagues who are already doing this work, you know, and who have expertise, you know, they have the sort of systems in place for us to join them. So it's about partnership working, it's about co-producing, it's about agility, something about our service, you know, trying to become agile so that we can work with smaller communities. We're a big, you know, SLAM's a big trust, and IAPT is a big organisation within that, so we need to sort of really sort of flex around our systems to work with community groups and such as Hilna's.
Ellen, can I just ask, because
yeah.
So just that I think when I've spoken to people who run IAPT services before in the past, they've often said that they've got a lot of these initiatives already, and I'm just wondering what sets your service apart? What makes that a bit different? What is it that you're doing differently to all the other IAPT services who are trying to engage their communities?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're doing anything, you know, vastly different from other services, but I guess I know what we're doing, and what we're doing is we're really having conversations of equal conversations. I mean, we've been doing community development work in Lewisham since 2009 when we became an IAPT service, and I really feel that we are there's a sort of a quality in our partnership working. So it's there's something like there, you know. I think Hilna may be actually a good person to respond to in some respects, because Hilna's on the receiving end. But I guess I think there's something about co-production for me that feels we're not just taking our workshops as they stand in IAPT outside to the community. You know, we're adapting and we're co-producing. They're culturally sensitive. Other IAPT services might be doing that too. But I guess Hilna's experience as somebody in the community working with us would be, I think, really important to hear.
Okay, so that moves on to you, Hilna. Then, would you be able to share with us how your organisation has kind of helped engage the BAME people in the community? Oh, you're muted, Hilna. It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mabadiliko and others have been championing for a long while, years in fact, for culturally sensitive spaces in recognition of the results, the research that showed us that the experience of Black, Asian, minority ethnic people were very different from mainstream, from white people. And for me, the first ones that have engaged in us in a meaningful way is actually Lewisham IAPT. Co-production historically has meant, from our perspective, from the Black community's perspective, almost stealing our ideas and get it for free. So co-production was hearing what we had to say, using our expertise to then go out and attempt to deliver the services themselves. Lewisham IAPT, for me, have done something different. Co-production is real. It's collaborating. It's recognising, you know what, there are organisations in the community already doing this work. We don't need to reinvent the wheels. So let's work in partnership with them. So it's more than co-production. Let's commission them. So they're helping to capacity build the Black business community at the same time. But through what IAPT did was recognise that something was working. Our relationship began with them referring their patients to us. The feedback was positive, and then them reaching out to me and saying, listen, can we do something together more long term? And that's where we are now. They've just recommissioned me to do some more of these emotional support groups for Black people in Lewisham. They're 12-week groups, and the relationship is good because they're allowing the flexibility. They haven't come down top heavy on me and, you know, tell me how I must run these groups. I've been allowed to continue running them in the way that I've been running them, and that's really refreshing, not to have pressure from your commissioners.
That sounds fantastic, and it sounds like you've been sort of given the freedom actually to deliver these interventions. I suppose I wonder if other services were going to try and set up or liaise with you, with your organisation, what would they kind of expect? How would they go about doing what Lewisham did and start speaking to you? What would happen? What would need to happen?
I think Lewisham IAPT and the relationship that we have, and I think it's a good model. It would be great if others would take it up as well. Our dropout rate in terms of the groups are really low. I mean, we have 12 weeks and we will have people last the whole duration. In fact, when it comes to an end, people don't want to end, so we're actually working on an exit strategy. Do I give them my Zoom space to continue? We're building up from the groups, we're training up participants to become facilitators of these spaces. So, you know, we're trying to looking at sustainability, but absolutely, I think that these spaces are informal. We don't ask for personal details. You get to speak your patois, whatever that is, and there is no judgment. We get each other. We can intuit things.
So it sounds like a really safe space. What would an intervention look like then? I'm trying to kind of get my head around what would it, if I turned up in your service, what would I expect?
You would expect friendship. You would expect people that have lived experience just like yours. You'll have people who understand things around internalized racism and want to know more. You will learn terms like internalized racism and microaggression, terms that a lot of us didn't know. We just experienced these things but didn't know how to react, didn't know what it was. You'll be supported, you'll be encouraged, you'll be told that you're beautiful, you'll be told that you're worthy, you will feel part of something, you'll feel like you belong, and you'll feel free. You feel free to express yourself, and participants kind of like reconnect with old passions they had around writing poetry or playing an instrument. They come together and exercise together. We can talk about nutrition from a culturally sensitive perspective, or we can talk about the use of ginger and turmeric and things maybe that NICE don't quite yet promote, but we have been using in our, from childhood. So we're reconnecting. We can talk about the African self and the different layers of the self and spirituality, and it's all informal.
It sounds fantastic. It sounds really, really good. And I suppose just having my sort of NHS hat on in thinking about outcomes, I suppose actually maybe at this point it might be worth introducing Yvonne, actually, because it's just like I've got a question for Yvonne. So how has sort of evidence-based interventions been relevant to this work that Hilna's just been describing?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so I guess what Hilna's described sets kind of the foundation of the group, and then as myself working for Lewisham IAPT, we go into this great kind of supportive space that Hilna has created. And what we bring along with us is the evidence-based work, is the work recommended by NICE guidelines, is the treatment that is effective for depression and anxiety. And that's low intensity CBT workshops. And I guess to give kind of a more understanding of what that is, so CBT looks at teaching people to recognize certain behaviors and thought patterns that may be maintaining their symptoms of depression and anxiety. So we're very faithful to that treatment approach because we know it works. The difference is when we bring it into Hilna's group, we address things that may have kind of been ignored in the past. So because Hilna's created such a safe space, when I go into these groups, I feel confident enough to bring up triggers that are ignored within normal IAPT. So triggers very relevant to the Black, African and Caribbean community. So to start off with racism, I think kind of acknowledging that this could be a trigger for their depression and anxiety, and being aware that any form of trauma, which racism can be considered as a trauma, being treated unfavorably because of the colour of your skin, can reap very kind of negative effects from a young age all the way through to adulthood. So when I go into these groups, I acknowledge that, but at the same time, I stick very faithfully to the evidence base, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I mean, it sounds fantastic, and it sounds like you're talking about, and I'm very, very aware with not therapists who represent their community from a BAME background, and wondering about any sort of initiatives to improve sort of cultural awareness for staff. Maybe that might be a question actually for Ellen in terms of how her staff, who are maybe not from a BAME background, can work with this organisation and support this work. If Ellen's able to join me.
Sorry, there we are. Yeah, sorry, Kevin, just say that again, the question again.
Yeah, so we were just talking about how important it is to kind of have that cultural awareness, and I suppose I was just quite intrigued by the fact that often IAPT services, the staff who work in IAPT services, are not always from a BAME background. They don't necessarily represent the BAME community, and I was just wondering what can your services do, or what can we do as a trust to help kind of develop this cultural awareness that seems so crucial for this type of work?
Okay, so I think there's sort of two. I mean, for me, there's sort of two questions there, or two ways that I can come at it from. And I guess the first thing I'd like to say really is about the workforce. So, and I guess that came up as that is one of our significant challenges in IAPT services in the NHS, and I think also in psychology. So, that our workforce doesn't represent our communities, certainly not in South London, and so from sort of, I'm very committed in IAPT Lewisham to be thinking about going outside and working with people, you know, like Hilna and other community colleagues out in our community, but I'm equally committed to thinking about what we need to do inside of IAPT, you know, which is increase our BAME workforce, increase development of the workforce, progression of the workforce, training, so that we have a workforce that represents, you know, thinking about recruitment, you know, and so we have a workforce that represents our community, so that we can, you know, I think that's just really an important. So I mean, there's lots of training we're doing, culturally sensitive training for the whole workforce. There's, you know, but I think that what's really important, and you know, it is workforce development so that BAME psychological practitioners are represented in IAPT services, and I think that's a very important development. We are, I think, working hard on that in IAPT Lewisham to increase our BAME staff.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm particularly interested in this because coming from a secondary care setting, I'm very much aware that as part of the NHS long-term plan, there's the idea of kind of providing an integrated care pathway. So maybe having psychosis treatments within an IAPT service, and I do think I think just as from my perspective as a therapist, who I've worked with a lot of Black people from the BAME community, and I've tended to find that engagement isn't the problem. It's more about so once people engage and once they feel safe, the interventions are very effective. But then they have to get in the door. They have to feel like they can be trusted and accepted and taken on and receive appropriate treatments. So I think that's the experience I've had. Do you think there are any other organisational challenges that we need? So it's recruitment, it's training. That's to you, Ellen.
I think there's a lot.
Frozen on me. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, there's lots of challenges. I think there's something about, you know, what we're doing here is raising the profile, the language, having the courage to, you know, to talk openly about racism, to talk openly about you know, the structural sort of systemic racism in our systems, and to be able to encourage and introduce those conversations within you know, our services. I think you know.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and I suppose, and I've got a sort of fine. We're coming up to the end, and I've got another question for Hilna actually, in terms of kind of what would be a really good outcome of today's webinar. What would be, you know, we've been able to get this airspace. We're talking about stuff that often gets brushed under the carpet. What would be a good outcome, Hilna?
One would be that other IAPTs contact Lewisham perhaps, and to explore running something similar for their patients. Two, that the workforce, you know, I hear there is a challenge in terms of, you know, recruiting. That's the process, it takes time. But an outcome for me would be, in the meantime, that all PWPs and IAPT counsellors actually ask themselves, how comfortable am I talking about race, oppression and discrimination with Black patients? And if the answer is not so good, to say something, to seek out training.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And although the focus has been on IAPT and Lewisham, I'm also thinking that this is something that the whole of the NHS needs to kind of embrace, because I think of, well, I know that within my profession of clinical psychology, and we all need to feel able to talk about the impact of racism on our young patients as they walk through the door, and if we could kind of find safe ways of doing that and developing our skills for that, then it sounds like it's something that all secondary care as well as primary care services would benefit from. I'm also having a thought about the role of commissioners as well, and I don't know if there are any commissioners or service leads listening in on this webinar, but is there a message for them? Yeah, maybe I'll ask Yvonne if you had a chance to speak to one of those commissioners, just as one of those therapists on the front line, what would you say to them?
That this method works. This method allows the evidence base to still be consistent, but it allows a practitioner to give these people a chance to express the disadvantages that they have faced. As you mentioned, Kevin, the treatment works, but it's about them feeling safe, feeling listened to be able to fuse with the practitioner to take on the advice. And that's what Hilna's group does. So I would say invest in groups, community groups. Let's keep communities at the heart of this work and work around them, rather than keeping the services at the heart and trying to make the communities fit. That doesn't work. So let's continue with this new approach.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic, and I think you're right there. We need to approach these challenges in a different way. Clearly, you know, kind of us saying, right, okay, we're going to carry on doing the same stuff. It's a no-brainer. We're going to get the same results. We're going to struggle to engage the BAME community, and actually these approaches are brilliant. There's been a chat that's been going on whilst we've been talking, and I'm aware that not everyone's been able to put a comment in. So I'd be really keen on people being able to kind of carry on adding comments after this this webinar is finished, and we will try and sort of get back to you. But I think it's been a really enlightening and very powerful discussion today, and it's great to see this type of change happening in the NHS. And it's a bit of a shame it's taken over 10 years for this to happen, but we're moving in the right direction, and it's all very positive, and I'd hope that the other boroughs can also follow what you're doing in Lewisham. And it doesn't have to be just primary care, but also secondary care as well, because that's where I work, and I know that that's where the need for culturally sensitive approaches to treatment is really important. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope that everyone's found it helpful. Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.